Hi everyone, it's Andre De Grasse here. Thousands of students and teachers from across Canada tuned into last year's Olympic Day webcast. So, we're doing it again. Mark your calendars on June 23rd, where you'll hear inspirational stories from Olympians and Paralympians, including myself. We're excited to celebrate International Olympic Day with you.
Hello everyone, and thank you for participating in the 2022 Race With Me Virtual Challenge. My name is Marissa Papaconstantinou. I am a two-time Paralympian and 100-meter bronze medalist from the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games, and I'm your host for this year's Olympic Day webcast. We are thrilled that thousands of students, teachers, and schools are joining us to celebrate International Olympic Day. But before we get to the athletes and Olympic spirit, we want to start with our land and people's acknowledgement. We are gathered on the ancestral lands and waters of all Indigenous peoples who have left their footprints on Mother Earth before us. We respectfully acknowledge those who have walked on it, those who walk on it now, and future generations who have yet to walk upon it. As we celebrate National Indigenous Peoples Day this week, we respect the long-standing relationships that Indigenous nations have to the land and acknowledge historical and ongoing injustices the Indigenous peoples endure in Canada, and will contribute to respectful relationships through our conversations, teaching, and community service. Thank you for joining us today. We are so excited to share the Olympic spirit with you on International Olympic Day. As I'm sure some of you know, the Race With Me virtual challenge was inspired by Andre De Grasse's motivational picture book and was brought to life with the help of co-creator Jessie Briscoe, who after experiencing numerous cancellations of his sporting events and activities due to the pandemic, thought of a way for children and youth across Canada to get out on track, get active after years of restrictions to combat the devastating impacts of COVID-19 on our physical and our mental health. The goal was to get out and complete the challenge. With that being said, we are excited to have the co-creator of Race With Me challenge to kick us off today. Please welcome Jessie Briscoe.
Thank you.
Of course, thanks for being here today to talk to the youth and teachers across Canada. Now, to get us started, I'm sure everybody wants to know, what was your inspiration behind the Race With Me challenge?
My inspiration behind the Race With Me challenge was because since all the sports were getting canceled and there was nothing else to do besides sit in your house and just chill, I wanted to get out of the house and help Canada with their mental health, especially the youth, since COVID-19 was canceling all the sports events and preventing people from seeing their friends.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it's so great that you were able to take initiative and to be able to inspire other youth to get out and get active, because it's such an important part to our mental health. I know that growing up, I was really, really into sports, and it was a big part of my development. But what about Andre De Grasse inspires you?
When he was running in the Rio Olympics with Usain Bolt, and they were just pushing each other, and seeing a Canadian athlete run against the fastest man on the planet just really inspired me to pay attention to the Olympics more and pay attention to Canadian sports in general and just appreciate them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was such an iconic moment in Canadian sporting history. I remember watching that race as well. But I understand that you actually got to train with Andre in Florida earlier this year. Tell me a little bit about that experience. That must have been really fun.
Yeah, it was a really fun experience seeing Andre De Grasse train in the morning and then driving to Jacksonville University to train with him myself, and just getting tips and tricks from one of the fastest men on the planet was just an amazing experience, especially to later run with him and get my PB. It was actually crazy.
So you actually got to run with him in a 400 meter. That's kind of crazy. Not everyone can say that they raced Andre De Grasse. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it was it was pretty crazy to run with someone who inspires me to be a better version of myself, and just being able to push someone as fast as he is it was just crazy to see the videos after, like the start and the finish of how close we were. So it was pretty close.
It's awesome. And I think it just shows to a lot of people, when you work really hard at something and you put the effort in and make it intentional, there's some really cool things that can come out of that. Now, I guess, how has your 400 meter time improved since last year?
So at the end of last year's Race With Me challenge, I had a minute flat, and so now it's 56 seconds after the Florida race.
That's amazing. That's like a great PB. That's fantastic. And are you planning to race the 400 this year at school?
Yeah, so I just missed competing due to shin splints, but hopefully next year I'll be back in action, training and competing.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse, for sharing your inspiration behind the Race With Me challenge. It was so great to hear about your connection to sport, and I hope you're able to get back to the 400 meter very soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I know firsthand the importance of physical activity. Growing up, it was such a big part of my development, not only as a young girl, but one with a disability. I was born missing my right foot, but sports and activity gave me a space to really thrive and be the best version of myself, regardless of my difference. I started track and field when I was 12 years old after getting my very first running blade. And as cheesy as this might sound, it was an experience that's really hard to describe, other than it felt like I had 2 feet for the first time running on that blade. I instantly fell in love with track, and I did it because it was fun and a way to stay active, alongside doing competitive basketball and soccer. The day I realized I had potential to make the Paralympics was when I was 13 years old. I broke the Canadian record for the 100 meter amongst the T64 classification. And for those of you who don't know what classification is, there are different categories in parasport based on your impairment. So for me, T64 is an athlete with an amputation below the knee. From this moment, I set really big goals for myself to compete in the Rio 2016 Paralympic Games. I trained really hard for those few years to get there, and the hard work did pay off. I was named to my first Paralympic team at 16 years old. The feelings I experienced were like none other. I was nervous, excited. I really just tried to soak in the whole experience. The anticipation of racing really started to get to me while I was in the athletes' village. I was getting more nervous closer to race day, but I was still really excited. The first race was the prelims for the 200 meter, which was my best event. I was feeling great and ready to go and race the fastest time I ever had until that point. And I ended up doing just that, setting a personal best, and I was into the final. Later, I found out that I had been disqualified for a line violation for just slightly stepping on the inside of the line in my lane with the edge of my foot. It was devastating. Not only was my Paralympic debut race the best race I had run at that time, but the first time I'd ever been disqualified from a race in the 5 years I had been competing in track and field. Although it was a challenging thing to experience, I learned something from it. That sometimes not everything is going to work out the way you want it to, even if you did everything you could to get there. And that sometimes you need to try and try again before it does work out, and that's okay. These experiences have helped shape me into the athlete I am today. And I know another athlete who recently had her first Olympic experience that can definitely relate to my story in more ways than one. This athlete is a Canadian bobsledder and has been competing in the sport since 2014 after competing as a throwing athlete on York University's track and field team. Just this year, she became a first-time Olympian competing at the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, where she placed 8th in both the 2 women bobsled and the women's monobob. She won a Crystal Globe during the 2021-2022 IBSF World Cup season as the 3rd-ranked monobob pilot in the world. Being in a sport where Black pilots are very rare, she has stayed resilient through challenging times and has hoped to inspire all kids to chase their dreams even when they seem impossible. Cynthia Appiah. Thank you, Cynthia, for taking the time to share your experiences with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's awesome. It's so amazing to have you here. I know you're in off season right now. How has this time been treating you, and how has everything been since competing in the Beijing Olympics just this past February?
This time has been very great, actually. It's nice to be home for a consistent period of time. These last 2 seasons have been very challenging for everyone, myself included. I hadn't been home for about 7 or 8 months prior to the end of the Olympic Games. So being home around family and friends and being in my bed that I love, it's been such a nice and welcome change just to get back into a sense of normalcy again.
Wow, that's incredible. 7 months on the road. I can't imagine. I'm definitely someone who I can do like 3 week blocks at a time, but then I definitely need to get back home and reset. But I can imagine that you need to be chasing certain conditions and environments when you're in your sport. So that's awesome. So I guess I kind of want to track it back and start from the beginning, and how you got involved with sports and what made you kind of lead the way to bobsled.
So I first got involved in sport with like in elementary school, like recess, you're playing soccer, baseball, you're playing soccer, you're running around with your friends. But my first taste of competitive sport was I think I was like 8 years old. And in the community housing project that I lived in, they had a program that was with the Toronto Blue Jays. And every Thursday in the summertime, we would go to Riverdale Park in the east end of Toronto and play baseball. And so even though it was like a low stress event, it was competitive for me. I don't know why I decided to become competitive then, but that kind of got my juices flowing, I guess you could say. And then I parlayed that into track and field, where at the elementary school that I went to, they had a track and field team, and I decided to try it out. And that kind of got the ball rolling to doing track in elementary school, track in high school, and then track at university.
That's amazing. I mean, you started with baseball, a very different sport from bobsled. What from track, I guess, then kind of made you push into the bobsled space? I do know like it's not super uncommon for track and field athletes to kind of get into bobsled, but what was it for you that kind of made it really interesting?
For me, it was watching the 2010 Olympic Games in Vancouver and seeing the women's team win gold and silver and thinking, that's so awesome. That's something I want to do. But I didn't know how to join the team. I had no idea what the process was to even trying out. So I kind of left it on the back burner and was focusing on track at the time. I was at York University and I was throwing shot put and weight throw indoors. And then I believe it was in the summer of 2010 or the summer of 2011, the Ontario bobsleigh team was having a tryout. And I was like, okay, well, here's my opportunity to try out for this team that I think is super cool. I've just watched the Olympic Games in Vancouver. And I knew in my track and field career that it wasn't going to lead to where I wanted to be, which was to go to the Summer Games. But for some reason, I thought that the opportunity to go to the Olympics would show itself in bobsleigh. And so that summer when they came to York University to do the tryouts, I went and did well enough that they decided to keep me on their radar. And when I graduated university in 2013, which was a few years later after that tryout, I decided to put like all my resources full steam ahead into trying to make this national team.
That's amazing. Wow. And you did, you set the bar for yourself. You worked really hard and you got there ultimately. And I guess kind of relating to that, how was your first Olympic experience? I know that you didn't get the results that you were hoping for, but I want to know some of the biggest takeaways that you had competing at your first games and how you'll take into the next ones like Milan 2026.
Yeah, I learned so much at Beijing 2022. I was fortunate enough in that I went to the games in 2018 as an alternate. So even though I didn't compete, I was able to get a understanding of the atmosphere and the environment of competing at the highest level. So I brought those lessons with me to Beijing 2022. And I thought I was ready, and I was in some aspects, but I still had a lot of learning to do, a lot of growing to do. And I think that showed in my results. I had put a lot of pressure on myself, especially in the women's monobob event, because that was my better of the two events, and I had a really, really good shot of not only medaling but also winning the event. And I think I let the nerves get to me as much as I tried to convince myself that I wasn't nervous. Looking back on it now, I think I was a lot more nervous than I needed to be, because I was getting a lot of positive feedback from even other nations were coming up to me and saying, "Hey, we think you have a really good shot of winning." And I think hearing all of that, maybe I built it up too much inside. So coming from that, I've learned to kind of not let other people's expectations of me dictate what I need to do. I need to focus on myself, listen to what I need to do, and stick to the path that got me to the Olympics. I was doing very well on the World Cup season, and I should have stuck with that plan going into the Olympics. So going to 2026, I have now 4 years to practice that so that when I get to the next games, I know what I need to do and be able to execute.
So I guess kind of leading into that, a grade 2 student from Sir Adam Beck Junior Public School wants to know, with all of the challenges that you have faced, what keeps you motivated every day to get to training and continue doing bobsled regardless of those challenges?
That's a very good question. I mean, being an athlete, there's always going to be some type of hurdle you have to overcome. There's always challenges. There's things that don't go according to plan. But for me, I've always stuck true to my love for the sport. I've always been a true believer that if you're having fun, that'll motivate you to keep going on. The second it stops being fun and you feel it's becoming a chore, or you're waking up every morning and you're questioning why you're doing something, I think that's when it's hard to stay motivated. So right now I'm just having fun and I'm enjoying everything. And again, I'm the kind of person that I like to challenge myself, and I still find this sport challenging despite being in it for so many years. There's so many different things that come out that pushes me to fight for every hundredth of a second and fight for every kilogram in the gym. And that's what keeps me motivated. And knowing that I've just hit, I've gotten a little taste of success and I want to continue it and see how far I can go.
Absolutely. And I mean, having fun is so important in sport. Sometimes it's easy to kind of lose a little bit of that when it starts to become a job and it starts to become, really high performance, and, people set those expectations, or you have those expectations for yourself. But I think like finding that joy and that love is so, so important. But I guess like drawing from that motivation and that inspiration, a grade 6 student from Elizabeth Simcoe Junior Public School has a question for you. And I know for myself, I had a really great role model growing up. Her name's Stephanie Reed, and she showed me what high-level Paralympic sprinting looked like. And this student wants to know who your biggest inspiration is, whether it's inside or outside of sport.
So I have actually two people that I like to call upon when I'm thinking about who's inspired me all these years. The first one is within sport, and that's Shelly Ann Brown. And she's who I watched during those Vancouver 2010 games that really inspired me to try out for bobsleigh. In winter sport, it's not that often that you see a lot of people of color, and especially Black women. And seeing someone like Shelly Ann not only compete for Canada, but then win a medal, it really opened my eyes to the possibilities that are out there. I didn't realize it then that I had been limiting myself. And seeing Shelly Ann compete and be successful, I was like, hey, the possibilities are endless. And I can transition into a winter sport and do well if I try, just like she did. And then the other inspiration is my mom. Like, she's honestly my world. She was the first person that supported me when I decided that I wanted to continue with sport and switch into bobsleigh. She knew how passionate I was, and she, as much as she wanted me to continue on with school and go and get a master's, she knew that she didn't want me to be unhappy. She didn't want to force something onto me that I didn't want to do. And right out of the gate, she was super supportive and helped pay for a lot of the things early on when you're paying a lot of things out of pocket to try and get into the sport of bobsleigh. And just the life that she's lived just to get to Canada. She moved to Canada in the 80s and didn't have a lot in terms of pocket money to get here, but she's made a great life for me and my siblings. And yeah, she's honestly such a huge inspiration for me.
Both amazing sources of inspiration, I'm sure. And just that whole part about representation, that is so important to see that. And I'm sure that you're also doing that for a lot of other kids out there. How do you feel about now kind of coming into this role of being a role model to others?
It's an interesting feeling because I never set out to come out to be a role model. I kind of was just thrust into it, and I do enjoy being that role model for someone, even if it's just for one person. I've always wanted to kind of like break down the barriers and open up doors for those behind me so that they have an easier path to getting to the top. And so, yeah, it's an interesting position to be in, but it's one that I relish every day and take to heart.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess that kind of like segues right into our final question for you. What would you say to someone who maybe needs some inspiration to chase after their goals or don't know where to start their journeys?
My word of advice is if you already are thinking about it, then just go after it. If you're having aspirations of this is where I want to be, and it's something that you're thinking about all the time, like you're eating breakfast and you're thinking about this dream, you're going to school and like, or at recess, you're thinking about this dream, or, you're just at home on the couch and you're thinking about it. I think that's your subconscious telling you this is what you need to be focusing on, and just research it or find someone to help you find information on where to start. But most importantly, make sure that you have a good support system, because we've all heard the saying, no man is an island. And it takes a village to raise a child. I think it's really important to have people who are going to support you when things don't go right, but then also there to cheer you on when things are going amazingly well, because that also helps in keeping you motivated, especially when those obstacles come through and you're like, I can't get through this. Those people that are in your corner, whether it's your friends, your family, your siblings, your, I don't know, classmates, all those people will help you push forward and get you over that challenge. And then it's just smooth sailing after that.
Well, that is a fantastic message. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your Olympic journey, and how you stay motivated and resilient through challenging experiences. I know that you've probably inspired so many people watching today.
Thank you so much. I really did enjoy having this little chat with you today.
Take care. I know a lot of us can learn from what she has shared today, and we're wishing her all the best in the off season and the season to come. The pandemic brought a lot of uncertainty for many of us. Shutting down sporting events, clubs, and activities was a challenge for us all. For many months leading into the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games, it meant training weights in my basement, running out in the park to maintain fitness and speed. It wasn't easy, but it taught me a critical lesson. Regardless of the challenges I faced or the barriers that existed, I would see things through all the way to the finish line. No track pun intended. Although I set this goal for myself, it was a lot easier said than done, especially in the initial stages of lockdown when I was forced to train alone. I had to hold myself accountable when no one else was watching. To see things all the way through, I reminded myself of 2 messages every single day: to be present and live in the moment, and to make sure that I had fun. This helped me enjoy my process a lot more and helped me let go of stress that possibly lay ahead. The second thing was to trust the process that I was in. All of last summer leading into the games, I was struggling to put my races together. There were good moments that came through, but there was always a missing piece in the qualifying stages of the season. My times weren't dropping where I wanted them to be, where I knew they could be. As a result, it started to become really stressful. I would see competitors' times faster than mine getting posted into the world rankings, and it discouraged me a bit. But in those reminders I set for myself of being present, living in the moment, and trusting my process, I said to myself repeatedly every single day, I'm going to do it when it matters the most. I said that phrase to myself when I would start to get down, or those races were not getting put together. And truth be told, it worked. A couple of weeks before leaving for Tokyo, I had started to hit the best times I had all season. Some in races, some in practices, and it all seemed like everything was coming together. Because I had trusted my process and lived in the moment, I saw it through to Tokyo, and I was more prepared to race than I ever had been in my life. I showed up and set a personal best in every single race I ran, from the prelims to the finals, and I was able to push through that finish line to a 5th place finish in the 200 meter and a bronze medal finish in the 100 meter. And even with all those challenging moments, the goal of seeing things through the finish line and committing to the challenge really propelled my performance. And I still know someone else who had the performance of his life in Tokyo. Someone who knows how to see things all the way through the finish line and has had a ton of experience competing at the highest level. I am here with none other than Canada's fastest man, 6-time Olympic medalist, and of course, reigning Olympic champion from Tokyo 2020. The father, Michael McGivney, and Milliken Mills High School student, upgraded his silver that he won just behind Usain Bolt in 2016 to a gold at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics in the men's 200 meter. Not only is he the most decorated Canadian male Olympic athlete in history, but also a father, raising 3 children with his partner, Mia Ali, who is the reigning world champion and Olympic silver medalist in the 100-meter hurdles. Andre De Grasse, thank you for taking the time to share some wisdom and experiences as a professional athlete with everyone watching today.
Oh yeah, thank you, Marissa, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I'm sure everyone watching really wants to know, how has life been like post-Olympics? What has training and just life in general been like for you?
Oh yeah, it's been great. I mean, I've had a lot of, had some downtime, after the Olympics. I ran a little bit after the Olympics was over, but, in September, I kind of just, I went home, I went back to Canada. I spent some time with my family and my friends. And then, of course, I had a newborn. For people who don't know, I had a newborn son, so I got some time to spend with him. Because he had just been born in May, so he was about 4 or 5 months old at the time. So I could basically just spend most of my time with the family. Just trying to enjoy the experience, the downtime. Took a vacation. So I mean, that was all fun. It was great. And now I had to reshift my focus and get ready for the World Championship in Eugene, Oregon. That's actually going to take place in the U.S. for the first time ever. So I had to just, after my downtime was over and my off season, I got back into training, started back my training, 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday. And now I'm kind of in that phase right now where I'm prepping for that. And I've been in that phase now for the last, 5 months. So it's been pretty good overall.
That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear you had some great downtime with family after the games, because I know they were a really crazy experience. I mean, for myself, I definitely had a pretty whirlwind of an experience. So speaking of the Olympics, tell us a little bit about your experience while you were there. What were maybe some of the challenges that you guys kind of faced? I mean, we were in a pandemic, and some of the positives that you also experienced as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we were in a pandemic, but we kind of just made the best of the situation. We were all very grateful that we were able to have an Olympic Games. For many of us, it was the first time ever going to the Olympics. So we all just try to really just enjoy that atmosphere. Even though there was no fans, we all kind of bonded with each other, with our teammates, with our country mates, and also with other country mates as well from other different countries. So enjoyed it, had fun, and made the best out of the situation, and just really try to stay positive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so great to hear that you guys were able to take, some difficult circumstances and just create a really positive atmosphere and environment out of it. I mean, it is the Olympic Games, and to kind of draw from that Olympic spirit and just making the most of the situation, I'm sure made a big difference for a lot of athletes there. And speaking of which, I want to know, and I'm sure a lot of other people want to know, what propelled your performance while you were in Tokyo to ultimately have that gold medal finish?
I mean, I think it's just really all the hard work that I put in throughout the year, all the, countless hours, in the weight room, on the track, I trained 6 days a week. So, I was putting in a lot of effort. I knew that this moment was only going to come around once. So I just wanted to just, make sure that I, put all my effort, all my work ethic and everything into this opportunity, into this, all my focus into this. So that was really just what I did. I ran, made sure that my fitness was there. When I got there, I made sure that, I continued to stay hydrated because it was really hot in Tokyo. So I just really took all the appropriate steps to make sure that I gave my best performance when it mattered. So, I think that was kind of just my goal. I knew, all the things that I've done. I had the experience before from the last Olympics. So I kind of just, used that experience as well to kind of help me propel forward for the Tokyo Olympic Games. So, that's all I really did. I just really just put in that hard work and had that determination and didn't give up. Even with the pandemic going on, I just continued to really just kind of just stay positive in that moment.
For sure. And really focusing on those controllables, things that you can only control, I think is what makes such a big difference, right? And now getting into the nitty gritty, students want to know, they have very specific questions for you. So a grade 3 student from Tom Thompson Public School wants to know, how old were you when you started running track, and when did you first think that you could make the Olympics?
Well, I started running track when I was 17 years old. So that was my last year of high school that I started. So I started pretty late. I played other sports. I played basketball, soccer, and so forth. So, track was pretty late for me. And to be honest, I really didn't think about the Olympics at that time. I think, maybe about when I turned 20. So that was about 3 years later. That's when I kind of was like optimistic about, trying to make the Olympic team, trying to make the national Canadian team and represent my country. So, it took me a while to get there, but, it wasn't just out of the blue that I thought, hey, I want to go to the Olympics. But definitely after, developing a passion and a love for the sport, that's when I realized, okay, I want to take this thing to the next level and I want to try to, represent my country and make the Olympics.
Absolutely. And there's been so much hard work and dedication that has been put in since those moments, I'm sure. And it just goes to show, like, it's never too early or too late to do a sport. You got into it later on in high school. Some people start really early and some people start later, but I don't think it has a limiting factor on what you can achieve and set your goals and to really get out there and get after it. And so that's awesome. But moving on, for sure. But moving on, a grade 2 student from William G. Miller Public School asks, after achieving such a high winning gold medal, the epitome of your sport, what helped you stay motivated to get to that point, and how do you continue to keep motivated to continue to work hard every day in track and field?
For me, I kind of look at for motivation, I kind of look at my goals and kind of what I want to accomplish. And I kind of just set targets. I write down things and say, this is what I want to accomplish this year. And I kind of go from there. So that kind of just keeps me motivated throughout the year to like reach those targets, be like, hey, I can't give up. I told myself that, I was gonna do this. So I gotta, go through with it. So, of course, what motivates me all the time is, of course, seeing other athletes do well, seeing my peers, it's just seeing, just drawing inspiration from, books or, other sports figures. All those things kind of just motivate me to like, I want to be, world class in my field. So I think just moving forward, I just always just try to tell myself just, take one step at a time. Don't always try to hit a home run out the park every day, but at least just try to get better each and every day towards your goals. And that's what kind of keeps me motivated, keeps me going, and continues to just, I always want to, continue to try to win more medals. And that's kind of what really just inspires me.
That's so awesome. And, goal setting is such a big key in that, right? Like, we are told all the time to set goals for ourselves and to make those benchmarks, but, to really kind of get into the nitty gritty and getting after them is the hard part, right? You can always set the goal, but doing that and staying to it every single day is what, really sets you from being just good in your sport to being great. And I mean, speaking of just like telling yourself to never give up and to keep pushing forward, how have the people around you, the people in your bubble, your family, your coaches, how have your support system been a key part in making that, so helpful to you in your pathway?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, my support system has been the best. They always encourage me, continue to tell me to keep going, and it's always good when you have people in your corner telling you all the time that you can do it. Eventually, you really can. You feel like you can, and it kind of just it lifts all the pressure and all the weight off your shoulders to say that don't worry about the outside noise, don't worry about everything else is saying, focus on what your support system is saying. Keep that bubble small, and you can continue to strive and do great things. So my bubble, which my mom, my girlfriend, everybody, like my coaches, my family, my friends, all of them, just told me to like, hey, don't give up on yourself. You can come back from injuries. You've done it before. We all go through a little bit of adversity, but you just gotta, continue to just keep working. And that's what I did. So definitely having them in my corner really was super beneficial and helpful to helping me get back from my injury.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as much as we try to motivate ourselves, it's so important to have other people inspire us too, just to keep pushing forward. And speaking of inspiration, who's your biggest inspiration, whether it's inside or outside of sports?
Definitely my inspiration right now is my kids. They always keep me going. They're just so full of energy, always smiling. They always cheer me up. So definitely they're my inspiration to, keep creating a legacy for myself and for them, and let them know that, when they get older, this is what their dad did. So definitely, they're my inspiration off the track. And then of course on the track, I would just say my first coach always, Tony Sharp. He's always been in my corner. He's always good for advice. So definitely he's always my inspiration. He got me into the sport, and definitely he's always been there for me when I need him. So definitely I would say him. He's still my inspiration to this day. So I enjoy seeing him and having conversations with him.
That's amazing. It's so nice to hear too that you have your coach from the past that you keep in touch with and you have that relationship with, and just having something to aspire for your kids in the future is amazing. And so moving forward, a grade 2 student from St. Andrew's Public School. So this was actually my public school, so it's kind of funny to see that. But what motivates you to stay resilient and continue training when you do experience those challenges?
I just continue to work hard. Continue to never give up on yourself. Always believe in yourself. Always have faith, and continue to stay positive. Like, not everything is going to work out right away, but eventually it will. Eventually things will click, and things will start, moving forward, and you'll be able to you feel like you're getting your groove back, you're getting your rhythm back, and things are clicking. That's what I always, my coach would always tell me, like, not every day, you're going to have a great practice, but eventually that one practice is going to, help you. It's going to click, and that's going to help you towards the future of future practices of what you're doing, and then future competition. So definitely I always just told myself that, just keep striving for greatness every day, and things will eventually start to click.
Yeah, it's crazy how true that is, where you really need to just trust the process. I feel like I went through something last season where, things weren't clicking. I was getting really frustrated, and then all of a sudden it just started working. And I guess it just happens like that sometimes.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's weird. Like all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, okay. Like, and then you just got to remember that feeling every time.
Yeah, absolutely. So on a fun note, when you aren't training and, doing track, what other sports do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, I mean, I love to play basketball. I love to play soccer. Kind of not physical sports. I like to play ping pong. A lot of board games, chess, checkers, things like that. Monopoly. So, those are kind of like my other kind of activities that out for sports and, kind of outside of sport that I enjoy doing. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Andre, just to leave us off with one final message, what would you like to say to everyone watching today just about persevering and chasing after their dreams?
Yeah, I mean, continue to follow your dreams always. Just know that the path is never straight. There's always going to be ups and downs, but continue to just, keep going, have fun, and really just bring that work ethic. Hard work and determination will always conquer overall. So if you continue to do that and believe in yourself and stay confident in yourself, things will always will go your way. So just know that there will be adversity, but just never give up and always persevere.
Thank you for taking the time to motivate us today in your busy racing schedule this season, and I'm sure you've motivated a lot of people watching today.
All right, thank you, Marissa. I really appreciate it.
We wish him the best of luck at World Championships this year and the rest of the track season. How do you all stay motivated? Well, that flew by quicker than Andre and Cynthia's races. I want to thank the Andre De Grasse Family Foundation and the Race With Me Challenge for presenting today's Olympic Day celebration event. Thanks to some incredible athletes like Andre De Grasse, Jessie Briscoe, and Cynthia Appiah for spending some time with us today. It was very inspiring to hear their stories and journeys to make it to the Olympics. I want to thank all the students, teachers, and schools who are on our webcast today. This was really a memorable Olympic Day celebration and shows the pride all across Canada. I hope you can take home a few key lessons in resilience and motivation from our speakers today, as I know I sure did. Andre shared some great insight of the importance of never giving up, believing in yourself, and putting in the hard work regardless of challenges or setbacks. Jessie shared his inspiration of Race With Me and his hopes of getting youth active during these challenging times. And finally, Cynthia shared her experiences in her first Olympic Games and how she plans to let go of any expectations from others and have fun. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, is getting out, staying fit, and having fun. I'm Marissa Papaconstantinou, and it has been a pleasure to be your host today. Keep moving, Canada, and we'll hear from you soon.